Other recruitment sources are things like building university relationships and going to college fairs or university job fairs. SIUE has them both in the fall and the spring, as well as internship programs. And SIUE has a really great internship program, and you should look into that because you can get paid internships so that you do important internships to learn important skills for the jobs that you might want to do. And often employers will hire the interns that they bring in. If they like you well enough and there's an opening, they will bring you on board to keep you there. So you want to take advantage of internship programs because those are a great way to get your leg in the door, to let people know what your skill set is, and then to be able to go from there. Additional sources are external job boards like Indeed and things like that, social networking sites where, like people on LinkedIn can advertise job opportunities. And then there are employment agencies where you go to the agency then assesses your skills, looks at your resume, and then sends you out to job opportunities that the company um, has communicated with the employment agency that they want to hire. So if I am the applicant, this is free for me. Unless you're going to a headhunter, which is an entirely different kind of thing. A headhunter is for higher level positions, and headhunters will charge you as the applicant. But employment agencies charge the employer who does the hiring. So you agree as the employer to pay a fee, and the employment agency does the screening and the matching for you. And then they send the applicants your way so that you have the opportunity then to interview them, to make sure that they are a good match for your company, and then you can get them into your assessment process to make sure that they meet the needs that you set for yourself in terms of the skills and the KSAs needed by the employee. Temporary workers are also a good way to get your leg in the door in a company because you're in there as a temp. And yes, it's a temporary position, but you're demonstrating to them what your capabilities are in the hopes that if a job opening arises, they already know you're a good worker, they know you understand the company, and then they may be more likely to hire you for a permanent position. So whether they're temporary agencies or permanent employment agencies, these agencies are really helpful for applicants and for the employer because they do a lot of the hard legwork involved in the recruiting process. We already talked about walk-ins, but we can also hire from our competitors. Now, sometimes it's called poaching, and it depends on how you do it. But if you see somebody that you like and you know they work for a competitor, often people will, um, approach somebody and say, "Hey, I've got this position. I would be interested in hiring you. I interacted with you at this company, and I thought you did a great job, and I would love to hire you to come work for me." Sometimes there are limits to being able to do that. For example, if you worked for the company and then you go elsewhere and then you take people with you, that's not okay, hiring from a competitor from that perspective. But I could approach any employee who works for another company, and let's say I want to get a new director of marketing, and I know that so and so company has a really good marketing director. I can approach them, sometimes with a headhunter, sometimes directly, and say, "Look, we're interested in hiring a marketing person. Would you like to come and interview, and let's talk about the possibility of you coming to work for us?" And that has its advantages because now you know they're a good worker because you've seen their work at another company and you can bring them on board for you. And then freelancers are basically gig workers. They're independent contractors, and they can do work for you, but ultimately they may want a permanent position for you, or you may want to secure them as a permanent employee for yourself. So they're not quite temps. Temps are people who come in, they literally know that it's a limited term They're basically doing the work that you tell them to do, and that's that. Whereas a freelance worker comes in as an independent contractor, they might be a consultant and they do some work for a while for you at their own pace, in their own way, and then ultimately you may choose to hire them on a permanent basis if you like their work. We want diversity in our applicant pool. And I don't mean like, oh, we need to have this many women, these many people who are black, these many people who are Latinos. We want a wide variety of people, including gender and race. And we also want qualified applicants. So this is where the challenge comes in. If someone's not qualified, we don't want to hire them, and we would never advocate to hire somebody who is unqualified. But if we have qualified applicants, then we want to have as diverse a pool as possible. And not just diverse based on demographics. We want diverse based on job skills, job availability, experiences, age, all those sorts of things. We want to be careful of our unconscious bias, because unconscious bias will limit our ability to truly assess applicants. And here's what I know from research that I've done. We did an experiment, and I may have said this in a previous lecture, and if I did, my apologies, but I'm going to repeat it because it's important. We did a study, and we had two pools of people. We had one pool that looked at a resume that had a male name on the resume, and we had another pool of people that looked at a resume that was identical to the other resume, except that it had a female name on it. So it was exactly the same. And then we asked the study participants, tell me how qualified your applicant is. Now, the group one didn't see the resume with the female name. They only saw the one with the male name. And group two didn't see anybody with the male name. They only saw resumes with the female name. And both of the pools were very diverse. They were mixed up and they were basically equivalent in terms of their skills and experiences and knowledge and things like that, because we asked them key questions to determine that the groups were equivalent. With these two equivalent groups, we then, as I said, asked them, how qualified is this candidate for this position? And what we saw was male applicants, even though the resume was the same for male and female, male applicants were considered to be more qualified for positions than the females were. This is solid research findings, and I'm happy to share my research study with you so that you see that in what we talked about. The resumes were identical, but men got the boost simply because there was a male name on the resume. There is no other explanation for why that occurred. But then what happened was we asked the individual to consider reference checks that we got, additional information about the candidates. Here's what we know about this person. This person's a great worker. This person has this skill set. And then what we noticed was when we asked them at the end, so tell us again how qualified these individuals are for this particular job, the male resumes were evaluated at about the same level. Not much had changed. But for the female applicants, they got a tremendous boost, and they were considered as qualified as the male applicants once that background information came into play. This is an example of how unconscious bias can stop us from truly accurately evaluating quality candidates for a job, because the unconscious bias that we have stops us from seeing them for truly what they are. We only see them through the unconscious bias that we have. And what we also know about unconscious bias is that it can be unlearned and it can be overcome by asking questions and learning more information. Whether this is bias towards my friends or people that I've met that fit into certain categories of protected classes, or whether this is applicants, it doesn't matter. The goal should always be, how can I learn how to overcome my unconscious bias? What can I do to manage that? And the way we do is by asking questions and learning more about the individual, rather than assuming that they are part of a stereotype and that they are lumped in as X group and not as the quality individual that they can and should be. Unconscious bias is a real thing, and it can be absolutely overcome if we are willing to take the time to ask more questions and get to know them one-on-one. Our goal, of course, is always to make sure we have a wider range of applicants, and that is our goal. And when we can manage our unconscious bias, that does broaden our pool and our range of applicants. In terms of racial diversity, it's the same thing. Unconscious bias will play a role in how we think about applicants, whether we see their skin color and make a judgment based on that, or whether we look at things on their resume and it's an unusual name. And the same research that I conducted when it came to male and female applicants, this research has been replicated with different racial groups, and the same thing shows up. The initial reaction to resumes of people that are Black or Latino or Asian have a certain prejudiced, biased initial opinion simply because it is our natural instinct to fall back on the unconscious biases that we have. When we make our unconscious biases conscious and we can see them, we can learn how to overcome them. So, where we place our ads can improve the diversity of our applicants. So, if we are not hiring enough black applicants, if we are really underutilized, then what we can do is send our resumes, send our job requests out to newspapers that have a black readership, or magazines that have a black readership, or hire at college fairs at historically black colleges and universities, HBCU. Harris Stowe here in St. Louis is considered an HBCU. There's Hampton University. There's a whole bunch of different ones all over the place. And so we want to make sure our applications, we're attracting applicants from these pools, and so we have to advertise there in order to attract them. So we want to make sure that the content shows diverse people, because if we want to attract diverse people, we need to have advertisement that is diverse. And we want to make sure that our messages are realistic. We don't want to be lying to people about the climate. We don't want to be lying to people about things that we say we're doing when we're really not. And we need to be honest with people. And when we are honest and transparent with people, that increases the likelihood people will be attracted to our company. Age discrimination is a huge issue as well. Remember, we cannot treat applicants different based on age, based on race, based on gender. We want to attract a wide variety of people and not discriminate against diverse applicants. So recognize that we all have biases, and probably even myself, right? And I'm 62. We all have biases about older workers. Oh, they're stubborn in their ways. Oh, they don't want to learn new things. Well, that's not necessarily true. I know older workers who are very good with computers. They're willing to learn new skills. They are not afraid to be challenged. And they bring new experience and information to the job that younger folks don't know and won't understand, because years of experience brings more skill. So be careful of making assumptions about older workers, and assuming, without assessing that individual, assuming that that individual doesn't have the skill set to do the job, or that they are too stubborn or too unwilling to learn things. Yes, there may be some who are like that, but not all. And your responsibility is to assess the applicant on their face value, not make an assumption about their age, about their sex, about their race, and assume that they all get lumped together as all these people, all those people, all them, those people over there. Veterans are an enormously wonderful source, and companies need to take more time to look for vets who may have comparable skills. Now, there aren't always easy matches between somebody who is a vet and the work that they did working for the military and jobs in industry, the non-military industry. Sometimes there's overlaps, but not always. But there are comparable skills that individuals learn in the military that can apply to industry jobs. The most important thing is if you are going to try to attract and retain veterans for your positions, right? You want to make sure you recognize that those transitions for them from the military to civilian work can be challenging, and so you need to do the work to help them to become acclimated to a different way of doing work in the organization. So we want to make sure we understand and modify our beliefs about veterans, to not make assumptions about them, and we want to make sure that we're hiring people to learn how to assess for transferable skills from one industry to another, and make sure that we are doing what we can to help them to make that transition. So training our supervisors on how to deal with these issues is so important, and that's part of our job in HR, is making sure the hiring managers know how to hire and work with veteran applicants.